Hi, my name is Randall Widenar. We're here with GSG Group, and we're interviewing Jim Renzes from the RSH Group, and he is in Irvine, California. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so he's going to be joining us here, and so Jim, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, and tell us who you are, and give us your background.
Okay. Again, I'm Jim Renzes. I'm principal of a company called the RSH Group. We spun out of Arthur Andersen in 2002. I was the practice leader for Arthur Andersen in the Western region in site selection and incentives and credits. I've been doing site selection since 1980. Started originally with the Fantas company in Chicago and worked for them for a number of years, and then have also worked with KPMG and, again, as I said, Arthur Andersen in the site selection and incentives negotiation area. And I've got about 35 years of experience doing site selection for companies in North America, primarily the U.S., but also Canada and Mexico.
Okay, great. Okay, so we're going to ask you a few questions. First, we want to know how important is labor to site selectors?
Well, I think labor is just about one of the most important factors we look at in, I would say, 90% of the cases, particularly now as we're seeing a number of the baby boomers retiring every day and a loss of certain types of skills in the marketplace, more competitive markets for STEM type skills, and the ability to try and recruit and retain those types of people at reasonable wage rates. So right now, labor is primarily the paramount factor in site selection for, I'd say, 90% of the projects we work on.
Okay, wow. So you addressed that. Is there any reason why labor is becoming more important these days? Any new factors that you didn't address so far?
Well, I mean, it's the rise of the number of skills, and the combination with that, with the retirement of one generation and the second generation coming in, the millennials who have a different way of looking at locations and also value, I think, probably more quality of life and life-work balance than other generations have in the past. So you have to really get into a balancing act where you can get people to locate in an area where they're happy living. At the same time, they have the skills necessary to compete at the highest level on a global scale.
Okay, great. So how is it that a site selector shops for labor, so to speak? What do they, when they come into a new area, how do they approach that area? What are they looking for in order to ascertain the type of labor, whether it be you're looking for a manufacturing plant or like a more sophisticated like data center for a tech center? How do you shop for this labor, so to speak?
Well, it's getting more difficult every day because the labor pool is starting to dry up. But one of the things that we typically will do is we do a paper study on the front end to try and eliminate a large number of potential locations to maybe 10 or 12 semifinalist locations. And once we get to the semifinalist locations, then we'll typically contact the local economic development organizations and solicit labor market information. How many people are available, in what types of skills, what are the kinds of companies are there, what kinds of training facilities are available, what are the wage rates associated with that, what is, have there been any layoffs, have any new companies been hiring or making an input into the labor market. And so we really start digging into, on a remote level here from California offices. And then we take that information in a little more detail there. We start doing an analysis to determine which of those areas might best fill the labor quality needs of the company that we're working for. And then we narrow that down to 3 finalist areas, and we actually go and visit those 3 finalist areas, and then we start conducting one-on-one interviews with similar types of companies in those areas, and ask those companies about the availability of workers, the selectivity, what kinds of education. One of the biggest factors we're seeing right now with headquarters and tech companies is the ability to recruit and retain people, because If you look at like Silicon Valley, I don't think you can buy a house there for probably less than $1 million. And not a lot of companies have that kind of, or people have that kind of money that they want to put down on a house. So a lot of these companies are looking maybe to expand to areas where they can recruit and retain engineers at a more affordable level. One of the biggest factors that our clients are looking for in Silicon Valley is, are we going to be able to recruit those people from the Bostons, the New Yorks, the Austins, the Silicon Valleys? Can we get them to these new locations? And if so, will we be able to hang on to those people? So that's getting to be more and more difficult, because you've got to be able to prove that that can be done. So we really look for more case studies than anything else, because it's difficult to say that a company would be able to move to St. Louis, for example, and bring its workforce with it unless somebody else has done it in the past and proven that it can be done.
So in terms of the site selectors and the economic development groups, when you come to an economic development group, and what are you looking for? Are there things that the economic group, if they don't have any labor information, does that disqualify them? How does that affect your process when you come to an economic development group in a given city and they have no labor data available presently when you're coming to them? How does that affect you selecting them over some other group?
We typically give the Economic Development Organization about a week to respond to our questionnaires and furnish information to prove to us that this is at the semifinalist stage, to prove to us that they actually do have the labor there and make their case that they are going to be able to supply the workforce needs of the companies that we're working for. If they don't have that information, or if they can't prove that, we're not going to waste our time on going to make a visit. So they'll probably, if they don't do that, they'll probably get eliminated at the semifinalist stage. They may never even know that they got eliminated. But we definitely probably won't be coming to visit them unless the client forces us to take a look at an area simply because they have another reason, perhaps a potential acquisition or something like that.
Gotcha. So potentially a site selector or an EDC could be dropped even from the selection process prior to you. They wouldn't even know it because they just didn't supply the data from your RFQ. Yeah,
you'll always be a bridesmaid, never a bride.
Okay, so what are some key things that you are looking for on those reports that people can provide, that EDCs and economic development groups can provide to site selectors? What are some of the key factors you're looking for in a report?
Well, obviously, the general information about the size of the labor force, how many people are available in the workforce, but now it's getting to be more into what types of skills do those people in the labor force actually have, how do you prove the availability of those skills, and it's getting actually down to the point where the skills are getting very specific. For example, I had one client from Silicon Valley recently who was looking for an area to deal with laser technology, and I tried to get the information from the local universities on lasers and brought it back to them, and they said, oh no, we don't want just laser technology, we want laser technology in this particular molecule. So it's getting down to the molecule. It's getting more specific, and so target industries no longer are just, it's no longer good enough to say in a target industry you should go after high tech. Now it's not even good enough to go after laser technology. Now you have to go after laser technology in this particular molecule.
Wow.
So we're getting more specific now than ever before. So you need to be able to know what your product is and how you can relate to those kind of companies. And so you can't just be a generalist anymore. You got to be a specialist.
Gotcha. So what impression does an independent report make versus just the EDC coming up with? Because obviously you're talking about primary data here. You're not talking about publicly available census data anymore. You're talking about somebody has to do some hardball research.
Yeah, I mean, census data, is a great starting point, but it's old already. It's 4 years old, and it's just the world has changed in the last 4 years, as we all know. So that just is not going to be able to cut it. We need stuff that's fresh, ready to go. Even census estimates are good, but they don't get into the specifics. So you need to be able to understand what industries, first of all, that you're trying to go after, and then in those industries, what are the specific skills that those industries use, and that's pretty easy to do. I mean, you can simply go on companies in those particular industries segments and find out what kind of skills they're looking for. So you can actually identify the kinds of skills that a company's looking for. Then you need to be able to prove to us that you have those skills. I mean, I was just looking at the website for Genentech, for example, in South San Francisco. I think they currently have about 500 positions open. I did a project for a company called Marvel Technologies in Silicon Valley. They're a fabless semiconductor design company looking for electrical engineers. They have 800 open positions right now. So there's a lot of jobs out there. There's just a mismatch between the kinds of skills that are available and the jobs that are available. And these companies are very specific about the kinds of people they want, the kinds of experience they want, and you got to be able to prove that they have that. Otherwise, in the case of Marvel Technologies, for example, they're just going to move to a different country. In this case, they just moved to China.
Well, why can't we do a report once someone asks for it instead of way ahead of time? So the question is really, do these reports need to be done ahead of time? Do local municipalities and economic development groups need to do their homework so that when it comes time to interface with you guys, site selectors, is there time for them to just make it up on the fly, so to speak?
No, we don't have time for that. We're looking at a number of locations, and if you can't respond within, I think I'm being generous with a 1-week time frame. A lot of consultants will give them 1 or 2 days. And if you can't respond in that level of time, then A, you don't know who your industries are, you don't know your labor market. It's like much like buying any product like a telephone system or anything like that. If you go to a salesperson and ask them, what are the specifications on this telephone system, and they go back and like, look, I'll get back to you in a month or so after we do some testing on it, they're not going to buy that system. You got to deal with somebody who knows the product inside and out, and that's what we're looking for from the economic development community. You need to know what your labor market is like, the kinds of skills you have. I mean, I see so many economic development organizations, for example, that chase the latest and greatest technology. Some people want solar panels and other people want biotech, but they don't really have the labor force necessary to support those industries. So you're wasting time and money and all your efforts going after industries that you have absolutely no chance of getting. It's most important to understand what your labor force skills are and then identify what industries can use those labor force skills, and the ones that are expanding in the U.S. or wherever you happen to be located, and then go after those particular companies. You've got to be able to make the case that you have what's necessary to meet the needs of those companies, and then you got to go out to those companies and you got to drag them by the collar over to your location and show them how you have that can meet their needs. It's not the other way around. You don't sit around and wait for them to find you. You have to go out and find them.
Now, have you seen any unique ways for communities, small communities, to get these, or even large communities, to get these things funded? Is it just a municipal, or are there state-level funds available for these things? What has been your experience? Have you seen any of that from your side?
From my side, I don't see it, and I don't really care how they get it done. I just need to have it done.
Yeah.
And, I think funding for economic development in general takes a back seat to other types of funding that don't provide as much benefit for the community. I think it's, in this country particularly, economic development is muchly underfunded, but that's a whole discussion for some other time.
Okay, any last words about labor reporting for us before we sign off here?
Every project I do, the first question out of their mouth is, we are concerned about the future of our labor force. How are we going to be able to get those people and keep those people with the skills that are necessary to allow our company to grow in the future? That's number one item that keeps corporate executives up at night.
Wow.
And you've got to be able to show how you can solve that problem. If you can solve the problem for you, they'll welcome you with open arms.
So that's all for us now here at GSG, and thanks for listening.